Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond Trauma podcast. Appreciate your being here and excited about the topic of today's conversation. Today, we are talking about compassion fatigue, something I have wanted to discuss on the show for quite some time, something many of you are feeling, or may have friends or relatives feeling. We're going to discuss compassion fatigue, burnout, and trauma, and how these interrelate. Signs that you or someone you know could be experiencing compassion fatigue, and what you could do about it. Of course, we're going to leave you with those really clear to-dos. So my guest today is Juliette Watt. Juliette is certainly an extraordinary woman. She has had quite a life. She has been an ATP airplane pilot and a master fight instructor. She's been a Playboy bunny. She's been a soap opera writer. She's won Writers Guild Awards and been nominated for a Daytime Emmy. She's also an animal rights advocate, and talks about her horses a little bit in this episode. And she was a TEDx speaker about the issue of compassion fatigue. Her current mission is really to help people with compassion fatigue to release the emotional and physical burden of caring for others and neglecting one's own life. Juliette is a coach. She has great, really accessible coaching program. And she also has a beautiful book out called In Between the Magic. She's she says what's on her mind. She doesn't hold back. And she has a lot to share, both about her own life with compassion fatigue and also about what she's seen with her clients. So I know you're just going to absolutely love this episode. And I am so glad to have you. Thank you for being great listeners of the pod. Thank you in advance for sharing with friends. Every time it gets shared, we just help get the word out there. And of course, your reviews mean the most to me, especially a couple lines written makes the podcast easier to find. So appreciate you, and I hope you enjoy this episode. We got it. Hi, Juliette. Nice to see you.
Hi, Laura. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's so nice to be in a visual sphere together as well.
Well, I know yeah, definitely.
It makes a difference.
It does. It does.
Yeah. So I invited you onto the podcast after watching your TED Talk on
Thank you.
compassion fatigue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really left a strong impression on me. And as you know, I am here to pick your brain about compassion fatigue.
Go pick away, darling.
Well, let's start with, why that topic is so important to you and something that you want to share with so many people.
Yeah. Compassion fatigue is it's a condition that is basically when you are looking after somebody, when you are a caregiver and you've given up sort of everything, really. It can be, excuse me, it can be, family at home, grandma at home, mom at home, dad at home. You've had to look after somebody's had to come into your home, or you're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth to their place, and your life suddenly has become completely secondary. And this can go on for years if you have a person with Alzheimer's or something like that, and your life just becomes completely secondary and your whole being becomes secondary, and you gradually lose part of yourself. And it's pretty much when you lose part of yourself in giving to somebody else and you've got nothing left for you. So this creates a condition of complete neglect in yourself. And it's also completely exhausting. You see, we as humans are not built to deal with the kind of stress of today that we are living in today. It's ridiculous stress. We're not built for it. We don't have the tools mentally. We don't have the physical body to put up with it, because we just don't. The amount of people with high blood pressure and everything. I mean, look at the TV. How many medications are there, for God's sake? And so what happens is you lose yourself in who you're becoming for someone or everyone else, and your
Mm,
health starts to suffer. You start to get depressed and you don't know why. You start to neglect yourself. You even things like your hair and the way you're dressing. You eat badly because you're usually eating on the run. And your whole being is focused on what do you need? What does this person need right now? I got to get a dog. And then sometimes you have to do way more than you are capable of. You have to give medications. You have to give shots. I mean, you're not a nurse. You're not trained in that.
yeah.
So you suddenly go
Yes.
to because a lot of people can't afford in-home care. In fact, most people can't. So you end up doing things that you have no business doing.
Yeah.
That takes a great toll. And eventually it takes a while, unfortunately. You start to feel nothing, and you start to maybe drink or
Mm,
take drugs or something to make this feeling go away. And usually, I call it anesthetizing. Alcohol will dumb you out. Certain kinds of medication will just dull you out, and you don't feel anything. And a lot of people don't want to feel all the things that they feel, which is why we have such a problem with alcohol and drugs, because it's too much. Everything around us right now is too much. Even this
yeah.
stupid election, I think, is causing people a lot. No, it's causing people a lot
Yeah.
of angst. I
Yeah.
mean, since when are we worried about a president, for God's sake? Now we're getting all jumpy and jittery about that. But compassion fatigue is literally the fatigue of giving compassion to someone else that, hey, listen, you may not even really like them very much. It may
Mm,
be a parent or somebody that you kind of sort of don't really like. And as people get old, or if they have dementia coming on, or if they have something like, they start to get really crabby, they start to get very, very difficult to take care of.
yes.
Again, you're not a nurse.
Yes.
So you start to slide and you don't realize it's happening. You don't hang out with your friends anymore. It gets to a really bad place, and that's burnout. And
Yeah.
burnout is when basically you have come to the end of that ladder going down and you don't care anymore.
Mm,
Suicide is a very common, very, very common result of burnout, or just drinking way too much, drinking to blackout, taking too many drugs. You're done. You're lost. You know what I mean? You
yeah.
can't go to therapy. You don't have time. You don't have the money. A lot of
Yes.
people, I mean, therapy these days, I don't know what the hell happened with that, but it's like $200-300 an hour to see a therapist, and most insurance doesn't cover that.
Yeah.
If you have insurance,
Yeah.
which a lot of people can't
Yeah.
afford. I mean, it's a really, does that make sense, Laura, a little bit about, it's
Yeah.
constantly being taken out of you for something or somebody else.
Yeah.
And
No,
it's
it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And what you're describing, sometimes you and I were saying there's a connection
yeah,
to trauma. When we
yeah,
talk about trauma, we sometimes say too much too soon, too fast. And that's what
yes,
it sounds like. It's too much on the system. There
yes,
hasn't been the training or the capacity building. And
yes,
frankly, even people who have a lot of capacity building have a lot of
yes,
training.
yes,
We're at a point where it's really beyond, even if you are doing yoga, even if you have great wellness skills, even if you have strong boundaries, sometimes I feel like yes, those are great tools,
yes,
but we have to look also at the systemic, the systemic errors that are causing people to go into this situation, because like you said, there's a system problem here. And when the system is greater than the individual, even with all
yes,
those tools,
yes.
we don't we're powerless against that.
Absolutely. I mean, compassion fatigue was discovered really by this professor, as you heard in my TED, who realized when he was watching nurses and caregivers taking care of soldiers coming back from war, who really have terrible compassion fatigue, terrible trauma. And then he realized and he watched as these nurses were starting to take on the symptoms of their patients.
Oh,
They were starting to come into them. And it's called secondary vicarious trauma. So the vicarious is it's out of you. So you yourself are not going through it. Somebody else is, but you're taking care of them and it kind of bleeds into you. And before you know it, you're depressed like they are. You're having really bad thoughts like they are. And it's only because you're trying to care for something that's very, very, very deep and difficult when it comes to trauma. And there's so many kinds of trauma. You may have even been through it and you don't even know it. I mean, I had my compassion fatigue and my trauma was my mother. And
yeah.
so 40 years I spent with this woman emotionally shackled to me, literally. My life was her life. It was encompassing to a point of I couldn't stand her anymore,
Yeah.
and she just bled me. Everything was, I tried to please her. She was a narcissist too, so that didn't help too much, but everything was to keep mommy happy, to keep mommy from losing her temper because I was terrified of her. And that brought
Ah,
up such trauma in me. I was scared to death of upsetting her. Even like if she would invite me to lunch or something and I was running 10 minutes late, I would start to sweat and have a panic attack because if I was late, my mother would clip me right across the ear, you know? Oh, and
oh,
so I had this terrible dread to this day, Laura, to this day. I'm terrified if I'm late. I go into this whole panic attack, and uh,
yep.
and because it lives in you. And we were talking
Yeah.
about it a little bit earlier. Trauma is basically something that has affected your whole being and has changed you. It's not like grief. I believe grief is a period of time where you go through this immense emotional feeling that eventually does pass. You go through grief to the other side. Then it finds a place in your head where it lives. And as we said, it can be triggered by a smell, a music, or this or that, and you have a moment and then you keep going. Well, trauma changes you. It becomes who you are. And it's very hard because you have to live with it and you have to learn how to live with it. And that's where, therapy, I mean, I do coaching a lot on compassion fatigue, which is basically compassion fatigue causes trauma in you.
Mhm.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, you're talking about, that fear, having to shut down parts of yourself.
Sure.
We talk a lot about in my trainings that, you know, being able to be authentically oneself is
Yes.
very important for the human being. When
Yes.
we can't do that, when we're afraid just to be ourselves,
Yes.
that changes the system, and that is trauma.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I want to say funny. It's not funny, but I also have the same. I have something with being on time from my childhood,
Yeah.
and I get very anxious about time. I have worked on it, but
Yeah.
it never goes away
It,
completely. It's
that's the
just, it's
thing.
always
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. It
It's
never,
always there.
no. And people say, well, how do I get rid of it? You can't. You have to
You
learn how
learn
to
to,
manage
yeah.
it. Yeah.
I tell people, I try to put it out there ahead of it.
Yeah.
I tell people I have this thing, I'm working so that I don't have to be embarrassed by it, so that
Yeah.
they don't think, they don't judge me. I try to get ahead of it a little bit.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And it affects, I mean, it affects everything that is such that feeling causes cortisol, that feeling of what we're talking about, that panic
Yeah,
that you feel where nobody can talk to you. It's like, no, I'm
yeah,
this, you're just in this box of panic. And that causes cortisol
yeah,
to rush through your body. And cortisol is not good. It is the fight or flight hormone
yeah,
that our body produces from back in caveman days when you are being chased by a lion. And I'm not being funny. And
Yeah.
your life all of a sudden, okay, you got to run. Horses, I mean, I have horses, and their whole being is on fight or flight. You know, is it
Yeah.
peaceful? Can I put my head down and eat? Okay, fine. Oh no, we got to run. And they're built that way. And as all prey animals are, you know.
Yeah.
But that cortisol that rushes through does damage.
Yeah.
And you can't make it. I mean, I'm 73. I still go into a flat panic of being late, you know.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
even for this, I'm totally prepared, like hours beforehand. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you warned me. You said, I'm going to be on early. So
Yeah.
it seems
Yeah.
like we use some of the same kind of coping mechanisms to
Yeah.
help us feel safe.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Good point. And that is a very good point because, again, compassion fatigue can get a hold of you, and it's a very solitary. It starts to, when it's coming into you and it's starting to build, you find yourself just withdrawing from people, from your life. Even if you're in a family and you're at home, you start to withdraw from your whole family and you start to
Mm.
not even want them around you. And a lot of people don't understand that what they're going through is a condition called compassion fatigue. It is a thing. It is not
Yeah.
just, I've got too much on my plate. I can't go out to dinner with my friend because, and then the litany of excuses which have nothing to do with you. It has to do with the
Yeah.
fact that you need to be something for someone else. I mean, you must know that. How many people go, well, I can't do that because I've got to go and see so and so with the so and so and the so, you know, and it has nothing to do with them. We don't seem to find time for ourselves anymore. We don't
Mm.
seem to do
Yeah.
that like we used to sit with a girlfriend and have a coffee in a coffee shop. What the hell happened to that?
Yes.
Instead of
Yeah.
texting for hours, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I'm thinking about, and I'm connecting this, what you're saying right now, to what your situation with your mom.
Yes.
And, a lot of people take almost pride in that, they're giving of themselves. And I want to say, it happens to all genders, but especially women,
Yes.
we're taught to give selflessly. And I'm sure
Yes.
that there's pressure too from the outside to like, that's your mom. She gave life to
That's right. That's right. Yes.
you.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's like you're a bad person if you don't do it. You know what I mean?
If you go have that coffee, right? It's like,
It's, yeah, yeah.
and
You've
really, that's
neglected.
what we need.
Yeah.
That's what we need to be well. And if people understood the statistics of compassion fatigue leading to burnout, leading to suicidality, then
Yes.
they might say, go have that coffee, doing those simple things for ourselves that can at least create a little bit of a buffer between self and the other person.
Yeah. I mean, I found what I did with my mother uh, was the hardest thing to do is say no. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of people have no clue how to say no. They've got themselves into this pattern of looking after this person or working in a job that they absolutely hate, and because
Yeah.
they don't have the time to look for another one, which is bullshit. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
a lot of people do that. They make this litany of excuses because they don't want people to think badly of them. They don't want people to
Yes.
think, well, she's not very good. She's not a very nice person. She just deserted her mother. She just deserted her family.
That's
Sometimes
right.
it's time to walk away. Sometimes it's
Yes.
time to say, you know what? I got to find somebody to do this with me or for me because I'm done.
Yes.
I'm done for my own health. And you can feel your own health disintegrating, literally disintegrating. I did. When my
Yeah.
mother died, and this is a good example, Laura, when my mother died, she died all by herself in London. And her
Mm.
last words out of her mouth were, she hated me.
Oh,
So I wasn't there. I'm not going to go 3,000 miles, 6,000 miles if somebody who's yelling that. No, I wasn't there. She had sucked the life out of me for all my life. And And it had started when my dad died I was 10 years old. And he died, and she looked at me like, oh, there's you now I have to take care of. And
Mm,
so I became the parent, which is a
mm,
very likely situation. And that's how it started. And I couldn't get
yeah.
out of it. I was a kid. What did I know? But you are imprinted by your parents from like 3 years old onwards. So when she died, I was here, I was riding my horse at a clinic, and I got an email, and I said, okay. Texted my husband. I said, hey, mommy's gone. He went, okay. And I went on with my clinic. I felt nothing.
Mm,
I felt, Laura, nothing. And I thought, oh, good. I don't have to have that phone call every Sunday for
yeah.
30 years, no matter where I was,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, something started happening to me, which was I went into this depression. I went into some serious anxiety, and I started to like turn into this other person of misery and anger. So I went to therapy, and I found out I had PTSD
Mm,
chronically, and so on and so forth. And I was in trauma, serious bad trauma, and my PTSD was bad. So I went and got
oh,
medication because I couldn't function.
yeah.
I could not
Yeah.
function. I mean, it was the black hole coming right towards me. So a lot of people don't recognize the fact that, yes, you can actually help it, you know,
Mm,
but you've got to go to therapy. You've got to do the work. You know that.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of things are coming to mind. I'm thinking about I had a friend who was recently doing a lot of caregiving to his mom for 2 years, and
Uh-huh.
we kept saying, and he did get her into a supported living. It took
Right.
2 years,
Right.
but I was nervous for him, less so while he was doing it and more for after, because we
Uh-huh.
know that it's
Uh-huh.
sort of when the relief sets in that
Right.
everything you've been suppressing comes out.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You start to live everything you suppressed. You start to feel, because I started to feel this immense grief. And I
Yeah.
realized it was because of all the animals that my mother had taken away from me and put down
Yeah.
without telling
Yeah.
me. And a lot of other things. But grief will sit in you until it's released, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, and that happened. I was crying every day over my dog that she put down, I don't know, when I was 11. I was
Yeah. You
crying
were
over the
finally
horse.
free.
Oh, I was 14 years old, and she took my horse away and put him down without telling me, you know?
That's right.
And all of a sudden, I'm sitting with my therapist in this terrible state. I mean, I am just screaming and yelling. And she said, Juliette, you're in a bad way. You're in a really bad way. And I was right at the edge. And that happened. You think you're going to be, you think you're going to be free, right? All happy, and you're thinking, oh, she's
Yeah.
gone. Thank the good Lord. It all comes, everything.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
relive your entire life of the grief, the anger, the rage. It's unbelievable how nature has built us to cope with so much. And then when that doesn't need to be coped with anymore, we got repercussions from that. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I see as a pattern is, people,
Yeah.
they suppress the emotions, they push them down year after year. It really, if you think about it, it wasn't safe for you to be mad
Yeah.
at your mom.
Yeah.
And
That's a
especially
very
young
good way of
organisms.
putting it. Very good way of putting it. Yes.
It's,
There was no
yeah.
safety whatsoever.
So
Yes.
you could not feel that feeling,
No.
because survival, the organism has to survive. And
Yes.
so it wasn't safe for you to feel that. And then when that became safe, everything that it wasn't safe for you to feel
Yeah.
came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the safety of that therapeutic environment, which is
Yeah.
good that you had that, and you
Yeah.
knew that you needed that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then I had to learn how to fix it, you know,
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
that's the big deal. What do you do? I mean, what
What
do
do you
you
do?
do? First of all, what do you do to stop this happening? Now we know a lot more, but unfortunately, we have become a very insular society with our phone, our devices, our everything. Our head is down all day long.
Yeah.
right? You look at kids now, their heads are down. Everybody's head is down, tinkling away. They sit beside each other in restaurants and talk on texting.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is going on? Now, I'm a lot older than yourself, and I don't know how to deal with this except get pissed off. Like, what is happening? Everybody has gone into this little box of devices. Unfortunately, our social side has been definitely thwarted. I mean, personally, and this is just my personal opinion, I think social media is the devil of all time.
Yeah.
It is destroying us. I mean, 14-year-olds committing suicide because they were shamed in social, what? You know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
you have to learn how to kind of almost go back to the way it used to be. So there you feel yourself starting to go towards this bad place, you have to learn how to say no. That is the most important thing. Okay.
Yeah.
These 12 to 14-hour days of trying to do your job, trying to take care of your family, trying to take care of the caregiving side that you have, or even just trying to take care of your family, trying to do two jobs. A lot of people have two jobs, right? You got a husband that
Yeah.
maybe doesn't understand. I mean, men are not very good with understanding emotional things, for want of a better word.
Not all of them.
But
We're
in
not always
general,
taught.
they are not built to be emotional beings. They are built to fix, provide.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Not their fault. It's not their fault. They just don't have the brain that is built that way like we are. We are nurturers. We are women. We're supposed to look after babies. We're a whole different complex. So you have to say no. So what does that mean? That means, all right, you've got this 7 day a week deal taking care of whomever. Um, or you've got yourself into a position at work where you're working 12 hours a day just to keep up and just not to be looked at as being a slacker, or, you know what I mean? Trying to get ahead
Yeah.
in the job. And you've got the
Yeah.
family at home and you're starting to feel yourself like lose it. You have to say no. You have to say to the family, you know what? I'm going to get with my friends and I'm going out to dinner tonight with my friends. Me and my girlfriend are maybe going to go for a weekend somewhere. And everybody's like,
Yeah.
you can't do that. And yes, I can. And you find someone to help you. You find someone to take care of that person for a couple of days. You
Yeah.
ask for help. That's a
Yeah.
biggie. Ask for
Yeah.
help. And people really don't mind being asked for help. People in
Yeah.
general are good. They like
Yeah.
help. They like doing that. But
Yes.
unless you say no, I am taking a day for myself. I am taking 2 days for myself. Hell, I'm going on holiday by myself. People, you can't do that.
Yeah.
What do you can't do
Yeah.
that? You can't just leave that. Yes, I can. And that's
Yeah.
where you have to be very strong. All right.
Yeah.
And then you have to find things that give you your own sense of peace. And I don't mean sitting and meditating. I can't do it. I just can't do it. I can't sit there and do the meditating thing. But I have horses. So
Yeah.
they are my solace. Riding.
Yeah.
When I'm on my horse riding, the world is good.
Yeah.
Or I sit with my animals. Great. If you've got dogs or anything, take the dog for a walk, take the dog somewhere lovely, sit on a bench, sit on a tree, take an hour and just let it go. I found a very, very good little app called Insight Timer, and it has,
Mm-hmm.
you know it at all, Laura?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, it's got some wonderful, and I'm not really into that, but it's really got some wonderful 5 minute, 10 minute, 20 minute, whatever you want, just little things that kind of, it's mostly breathing, mostly like getting all this angst out of you. And so that works.
Yeah.
And just really being firm and taking time for yourself and people don't do that. They don't do that. They say, I can't. I mean, how
Yeah.
many people have I had? How many people? Why don't you do this, that, and the other? I can't do that. Why not? Well, then because so and so would be left alone, and then everybody would be saying how bad a person I am. Who cares? Honestly,
Yeah.
who cares?
And I think you're naming a lot of really important things. I mean, the first thing is to notice the signs
Yes.
that you're falling into this, which, you said them, but just to reiterate, right? Like starting to feel nothing
Yes.
or needing to self-medicate,
Yeah.
or and one that I wanted to bring up that you mentioned earlier, which I think is very important that you mentioned, I think with the nurses is, well, you said they were taking on the symptoms, so that's another one. But the other thing you said real quickly was also, or maybe it was about you, was this anger. And I think
Mm,
that's a really big sign when you start to
mm,
get angry at the people that you used to enjoy to help.
mhm.
Um,
Start
and
to
there's
them.
resentment when you
Totally.
start to notice that, that to me is a very important sign to step away, because you can actually harm them. You can
Oh,
actually harm
totally.
them,
Oh, yeah.
and it's better to walk away. So I wanted to point those out for people, sort of, and are there some that we're missing that would be, a sign that you're starting to head into compassion fatigue, or you're already there?
You can't sleep. Your
Okay.
sleep is completely wrecked because you're like, "Oh, did I do that today? Oh, did I do that today?" You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The adrenaline, it's the adrenaline rush that doesn't stop. It's
Yeah.
constant. I mean,
Yeah.
I used to, when I was younger, and living with my mother, which was, and I would go out on a date and she would wait up for me. And when I came home, if I was late, I was sick to my stomach. And I would try and go up the stairs in silence, and it was a
Yeah.
house in England, so it had a creaky stair.
Yeah.
And I would get to the top of the stairs and I would see the light on underneath her bedroom door. And I went into a full-blown panic attack because she was waiting and she was angry. And I would open the door to this fuming anger of my mother screaming at me. And
Yeah.
and I would be starting, I shook. I used to have this bad thing that would happen to me. I would start shaking for no reason whatsoever. And that apparently is chronic anxiety and PTSD. And I didn't
Yeah.
know that. And I was 13 when it started. Literally, I would have to get on the floor and hold onto the wall. It was that bad. So you have to start noticing. I know that's a little dramatic, but bringing it down to a more sort of regular level, you have to notice, why am I anxious? I never used to be.
Yeah.
Why am I
Yeah.
angry? Why am I starting
Yeah.
to really resent my whomever?
Yeah.
It could be even your husband, you
Yeah.
know.
It comes out, it can
Oh
come
yeah,
out like, and it can come out not at the person it's directed to. It's a good point as well.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and another point you made that I just think is so good, I want to just pause on it for a second, is to remember your baseline. So this is really important, or like, because you can get so far away from it that you forget what it was like to feel good.
Mm,
And you know
yes.
what I mean? So
Oh
you
yeah.
don't realize. But if you can just give yourself almost like a few minutes, like you were talking, like 5 minutes, you start to remember, oh, this is what I felt like. Oh, this is what it's like to be okay. Oh, I'm not okay. Because the not okay starts to feel like the norm.
Exactly. You look in the
Yeah.
mirror and you haven't done your hair. You haven't worn makeup in God knows how long. You've put on some weight. You're starting to look
Yeah.
frumpy because you're in sweatpants most of the time. Or
Yeah.
or you've gone to work and you're so frazzled, you're in there with your glass of wine or two or three or four to get through.
Yeah.
That is all things that you never used to be.
Right.
You never
Right.
used to do that. You never used to feel anger. You never used to drink too much. You never used to not do your hair or not put
Yeah.
makeup on or not try and look nice. You
Yeah.
know, you don't care about what your husband thinks about you. It doesn't matter. Who cares? You just don't
Yeah.
care anymore. And that's another sign.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the signs do come, Laura. You know,
Yeah.
this doesn't come as a surprise. Only if you don't know how to recognize them,
Yeah.
you just think, oh, I'm tired, or I'm this and that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
I'm run
coming down with
down.
something.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's so good to, like you said, give it a name. It
Yes.
is something, say,
Yes.
share the signs, have something that's not, when you weren't that, to compare it to. And there were some other really great things that you said that I just wanted to put a little like underline, which is about, the guilt of leaving,
Yes.
taking a break,
Yeah.
which, if people know that, well, the trajectory of this is,
Yeah.
suicide. So
Yes.
taking if it's that versus, you go away for a few days, right? But what I found also is when you leave, those people rise up.
Yeah.
So you didn't think they could handle it without you, but they figure it out, and they're
Oh,
never
yeah.
forced to if you're always there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know,
And you're always there, and you're the one that says, no, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll take
you
care of it.
gotta
Oh,
let them. And as you said, actually, a lot of people want to.
oh yes.
People want to feel needed. They want to feel helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And it,
So you sometimes I find that people that give too much, they have to give up, think of it like you're actually helping.
for sure. And if you don't have a family situation to help you, then you can have friends. You can say, listen, I'm
Yeah,
going to a bad place with this. I am exhausted. I can't. Could you give me a hand? I need some help.
yeah,
I just need someone to watch so and so for, and or if they're in a nursing home, that's the other thing.
yeah,
Don't spend every day there. Go
yeah,
visit
yeah,
twice a week. They're perfectly
yeah,
fine. They're being taken care of, hopefully. And you go twice a week. Don't go every day.
yeah.
Because
Let other people step up for you. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And if there is nobody else, which is sometimes, I mean, in my case, there was nobody else, it takes tremendous strength because the guilt you feel is so huge. I mean, it's
yeah,
encompassing, and it will bring you down. And all of a sudden you look and you're 50 years old and all your dreams, all your aspirations, all the things you wanted to do, you haven't done. And here you
mm,
are, and then maybe the person passes away or dies or whatever, and you're by yourself and you're not a
yeah,
young woman anymore, and you've got nothing. You've got nothing. You've built
yeah,
nothing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And everything you dreamed you wanted to do, you never did.
yeah,
I didn't. I was running around. I mean, yes, I did a lot. I was a Playboy, but everything I did
yeah,
was to survive. I became a
yeah,
Playboy bunny in London because it was the highest paying job. But I had to forge my
yeah,
birth certificate in order to do that. But if I didn't, the debtors people were coming to take my mother away, and we were going to be homeless on the street because my mother was
yeah,
she was mental. She was insane.
yeah,
She was in a really bad mental state. So,
yeah,
I became, everybody thinks, oh, it was so glamorous. For me, it was like, okay, what's the highest paying job in, okay, bunny, I can do that. Right. And
yeah,
then it
yeah,
was just this, mad thing. And then my mother decided that I was going to be like famous. She decided I was going to be Liza Minnelli. So she
yeah,
pushed me into that world of like cabaret and everything. I didn't
yeah,
really want to be there. I went and tried to join the American Air Force because I wanted to fly airplanes. I didn't want to
yeah,
be on stage. I didn't. So all this thing, but it all worked out in the end, right?
hmm,
And but you have to be so strong, and a lot of people are not strong. Thank God I was born tremendously strong with tremendous discipline, only because of my dad. But a lot of people, bless their hearts, they don't have the training. They don't have
yeah,
the tools. And they fall
yeah,
into this abyss of depression because anger suppressed is becomes depression. Did you know that?
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you
yeah,
push that down, you push, and I'm sorry, Laura, I may be
yeah,
completely wrong. It's my opinion. I may be wrong, but I do believe that too much suppression of too much angst, anger, sadness, grief, that's where cancer comes from. That's
yeah.
just my
Well,
opinion.
we know that, this stress, the emotional stress that we put on our bodies, and we know, through that childhood stress, particularly in childhood trauma, have an enormous impact on our physical health.
Yeah.
And can folks can look up the ACEs study, and maybe we can link that as well, that shows that, if you had neglect as a child, if you had trauma as a child, you are at much higher risk for things like cancer, diabetes, heart disease.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
there's absolutely a link there. And there's a strong link between ongoing stress,
Yeah.
like you were talking about, that constant cortisol, that constant checking, not being able to sleep. There are, severe physical health ailments that come from that. So
Yeah.
I think, just reminding people of that it's not selfish, because you have your dreams, or maybe you have kids and you got to be there for them.
Yeah.
So it's actually not selfish to take care of yourself,
Yeah.
because you won't be good to anyone.
Well,
Are there other?
we were taught that that word selfish is bad. Remember?
Right, right,
Yeah,
right,
I was. You're
right.
being very
Yes,
selfish. It was a negative word. And
right.
it's not a negative word at all. It just means
Yeah,
take care of yourself,
yeah,
before others. And that sometimes is looked upon badly. What do you mean you're taking care of yourself before anybody else? And
yeah,
nowadays it's almost like people don't care because they've, again, insulated themselves away from reality. We're not living
yeah,
in reality. We're living in social media, which is not reality.
yeah,
It is the most
yeah,
dangerous thing that ever happened to us. You know,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
we're not laughing so much anymore. Have you noticed?
Yeah, I
Not
have. Yeah,
People aren't sitting together and having a good laugh. Laughter,
yeah,
apparently, I was reading the other day, apparently is like this amazing thing that happens to your body when you're laughing or when you're with a bunch of dogs that are playing. I mean, it's all this, you know what I mean? One of the things they say, the best stress reliever is to watch dogs play with each other, you know?
wow.
And
Yeah, that's great.
it is. I mean, there's lots of things. I'll often see my horses like running, having a good time, running and playing and going and doing something. And I go, wow, that's total
Yeah,
freedom. And that's what you have
that's
to kind of
beautiful.
learn. Yeah, you have to learn and you have to force yourself. You have to force yourself to get out and get away and
Yeah,
try and become you again, if you know who that
yeah,
is.
beautiful, beautiful. Well, yeah, find yourself again, or find who you are now.
Right.
But come back to yourself. I think these are some great tips that you've mentioned. Just,
Yes.
laughter, but, let yourself go do something silly, maybe even
Yeah.
something out of character, just to break up your routine of being stuck. Being around animals, being
Yeah.
in nature,
Yes.
being with, girlfriends, people who fill you up. Um,
Yes. Yes.
these resources. Any other tips for folks who are going through this? Therapy as well, you said, was very
Yes.
helpful for you, especially coming out of that. I think we want to mention that as well.
Yes.
Anything that we
Very much.
missed as far as tips for folks?
Um, Basically, try and mm, try and really recognize what is happening to you so that you go, wait a second, I'm not usually this angry. I really snapped at that person. And sleep deprivation will
Yeah.
just about wipe you out. So find a way
Yes.
to be able to sleep, find
Yes.
some,
I think that's a big one.
oh man, that's huge.
Yeah. If you
Um,
can just sleep, sometimes you can get enough of the clarity of mind to start noticing these other things.
yes. Yes,
Yeah.
you can. And I have to admit, I've that's been my problem for a long, long time, the sleeping deal. And
Yeah.
now what I do, and this is just me because I found that it's the one thing that absolutely helps. I take a little gummy at
Yeah.
night,
Yeah. A lot of
a
people
little
do.
gummy of indica, and
Okay.
boom, it's just like 5 milligrams. Get it at the local, here. And what it does is it goes, shroom. It's not a drug. It's not medication, it's medicine, which is different,
Yeah. Yeah.
that helps me. It slows everything down because it's that adrenaline popping. You know what I'm talking about? Where
Yeah.
your just adrenaline is just going and you're like, I don't understand this. You've got
Yeah.
to stop that because that's pumping the cortisol. And the
Yeah.
cortisol is, again, the fight or flight. and you feel horrible. So very important, very important. Find a way to sleep. Try and please try and do it without medication. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
the marijuana, I don't like marijuana. I don't like the smell of it. And God knows I don't smoke it because I was a smoker for a long time. So I don't want to go near that. But I found these little gummies, these little ones, and it's amazing how they will help. If you find,
Yeah.
don't take too much for God's sake. Otherwise you'll,
Well, people have to be careful with the gummies that they're like regulated and from a good place, because sometimes people have trouble when there's too much in
THC. Yes.
in one bite. They do help a lot of people. And like we said, if you've been in your whole life hypervigilance, afraid, you've got to break that somehow. And sometimes it needs, some chemical support.
Yes.
And once you can sleep, you can do so much better. Yeah.
You can definitely do so much better. And sometimes, I mean, there is some medications which I take that are tremendously helpful. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that because honestly, Laura, I had no choice.
Yeah.
I couldn't get rid of this stuff. So
Yeah.
there are some medications that they've made that are really, really good. And they're not, I mean, they don't have this litany of side effects that are just insane. I mean, if you listen to some
Yeah.
of the side effects, you're like, what? Suicide
Yeah.
might happen. You might want to jump out the window or you might want to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's
know.
okay. All right. So if I feel
Well, thank
murderous,
goodness.
it's good.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
okay.
goodness they've gotten a little bit, they've gotten better. They're able
Yeah.
to more fine tune the
Yes.
medication to the individual now.
Yeah.
It's so great when you start with
Yeah.
some of the more natural therapies and then see, okay, if it's not working after a time,
Yes.
don't go right into that. Obviously, work with a professional.
Well,
Julia, yeah,
yes, there are professionals who really know how to teach you about edibles and all that stuff. Also, you really want to try and find a therapist that knows what compassion fatigue is. That's
yes,
very important because a lot of
yeah,
therapists, like my therapist, deals with compassion fatigue and trauma. That's her deal.
perfect. Yeah,
That's what she did.
yeah,
And so you need to find a therapist that's in that lane and that
you
understands,
do.
okay, you've got compassion fatigue. Let's start from the beginning of that from your childhood, and they will. And don't get freaked out about, oh no, it has nothing to do with my child. Yes, it does. Everything
Yeah,
to do with your childhood. Everything.
yes,
So
yes,
one of the things I found helpful was
yeah,
understanding where it came from, understanding that it wasn't my fault, that I wasn't a bad person, that I wasn't a
yeah,
bad child, that my mother was insane. And I'm saying that in the literal sense. She was insane. She had no business being a mother. Okay.
yeah,
But back in the day, no medication, no therapists. If you were a little bit off, you were put into an asylum in England. Literally, it's
yeah,
Dickensian,
yeah,
right? So she couldn't get any help. So she
mhm,
went down into burnout and she's trying to bring up a child as she's in burnout, suicidal. How fun is that?
yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So
Well,
yes,
that alone, and I was thinking about that earlier. I was like thinking if I should say that it was, it was obvious to me that it was her trauma
yeah,
and her mental health issues
yeah,
that were the reason to take care of our own selves so we don't
yeah,
pass that along to someone else.
yes,
We
yes.
have
They
to
put it
do
in
our
you.
own work. We
Yes.
have to do our own work so that we don't put that on to someone else and stop those cycles. And
And not,
it's beautiful
yes.
what you have.
Yes, and also be very careful, be very, very careful if you're single, that you don't attract somebody who thrives on people who are in a mental state of needing a little help, of being,
Yeah.
because you will find the narcissists will come along,
Yes.
the
Yes.
abusers will come along, the people
Yeah.
that you do not want to be with, but you get the boyfriend that's literally becomes the person who put the trauma into you. I mean, I've chosen
Yes.
people that are my mother in a
Yes. It's
male
very
form,
common.
right?
It's
And
very
you want to
common.
be,
Yeah.
if you were, God forbid, if you were abused as a child, if you were hit, be very careful you don't attract somebody that duplicates your youth, that
Yeah.
duplicates what you felt, what was put into you. Because I'm telling you, Laura, I know off the top of my head 10 people that are with the wrong
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, we tend to go for that because it's what it feels normal. It's the
Yes.
roles that we're used to. We haven't known differently. So there's a
Yes.
ton of reasons. I'm
Yes.
actually going to have some relationship experts to talk about trauma and relationships.
Yes.
So it's great that you kind of ended us here, and
Yes.
I think that'll probably be our next episode. So folks who are really interested in that dynamic.
Yes.
I know
Yes.
we're hitting towards the end of our hour, and I
Okay.
want to make sure we tell people how they can learn more from you and get some resources from you that want to
Yes.
go deeper into this, because I think we just scratched the surface.
Well, if they go to my website, which is juliettewatt.com, there's everything there. I do coaching specifically for compassion fatigue, which has been very successful with people that are really stuck. And I unstuck them, and we've had some pretty dramatic results in a very short
Yeah.
space of time. This is not like a year deal. I offer coaching in blocks of 3. And to be honest, sometimes it's only
Wow.
taken 3, and they're like a different.
Wow.
Yeah. Once you understand this
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
and also I have my little book here, which I'm very proud.
Yes.
Yes, it came out
It's
last year,
beautiful.
and it's basically my memoir from when I was born until I was 28. But in
Mm.
here is, aside from all the adventures and the fun stuff, is the journey of my mother and I. And I I wrote this for every woman who's ever had a mother like mine, of which there are many, and has had a life of having to survive. Mine was a bit dramatic, but take that out and it
Yeah.
really does touch home on a lot of things. I mean, some of the things I had to do to survive were insane, but I had to do them. I did not think I
Yeah.
was doing anything fun, fantastic, and amazing. I was just trying to breathe.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
called
It's called,
In Between the Magic, and it's available on Amazon.
and we're
And
gonna link it in the show
yes,
notes as well.
thank you. Well, it's on the
Thank-
website as well, but it's on
okay.
Amazon right now. So it's a good
Great.
read if you're going on an airplane.
Well, thank you, Julia. I think you have so much to offer people, and the fact that it comes from your own story, it makes it even more powerful. And I hope people will find you and read your book and use your coaching and your resources to get themselves
Yes,
out of compassion fatigue, or
yes.
prevent them from even getting there. I've really enjoyed my time sitting
Thank
down
you.
with
And
you.
I'm really grateful to you for bringing me on. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure talking to someone who actually has a basis of knowledge about this, because sometimes to try and actually explain this to folk can be a bit difficult. So I really appreciate that you know what I'm talking about. And thank you for
Yes,
having me on. It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
thank you.